And the magic button. And thank you all for being here this morning. As you all know, we've had Sheriff McGivern acting since the time when the commissioners were able to persuade former Sheriff Brave to take administrative leave. As you may or may not know, the statute required once Sheriff Brave actually resigned, as he was just indicating, the statute requires this in view of the fact that it was more than 1 year to go, and the delegation it acts in place of the people to elect a sheriff, and that's what we're looking at. So we had an application process, and Mr. McGivern was the only applicant. So it's not a tough decision, but we have somebody in place similar to what it was with Emily, who was acting there and doing much of the job at Tom Velarde's request, training her up to do a lot of the functions and so forth. So smooth transition, and that's what we're looking at here again today. So with that, I open the discussion from any of the members of the Policies and Procedures Subcommittee for questions or comments, whatever, and anyone have questions or comment? Yeah,
You first.
I just to say thank you for stepping up. I mean, it's a really disruptive event that occurred. And I think it really opened a void in the department, and having somebody that's been in the department, knows the department, and allows a continuity of services is great, especially at the tail end of your official career. So it's so again, thank you for stepping up.
Well, thank you very much for the comment. Big part of what we went through was the scrutiny from the public and outside. Everyone kind of paints with a broad brush, thinking, well, if the sheriff's bad, they're all bad, and that is absolutely not the case. There were a few other bad apples in the group. None of them are employed by the county any longer. So we're making progress, but we still have to prove to the public that we've got integrity. We're not going to fail. That's not an option for us. We're going to move on and do things correctly. And that'd be my promise to the delegation and to the citizens.
Jim.
Could you give me the name of your second in command?
Stephen Burke. He's
And what is his position?
his current rank is major, but he's in an acting position of chief deputy, because that's what I am, as the chief deputy, and I'm in an acting position of interim sheriff or CEO. Some people don't recognize the term interim, especially some of the other sheriffs. So I've been kind of staying low key on that issue, but I have been determined as the CEO until you folks determine otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you turn 70 on the 24th of October.
Yes, sir.
You're going on vacation the 1st of November.
Yes, sir. For 2 weeks.
So ideally, when you turn 70, we could move you over, or you could just call it a day and call
Yes,
it
sir. I
a
could
tour
revert
and-
back to a different position, or it could revert to Major Burke, whatever you
And
folks
and
decide.
and you
Either
go
one
home
is perfectly
and say it's
permissible.
over. Do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference. I think it's up to you folks, and it's 10 months away. So, obviously a lot can happen. I would assume I'd probably revert back to chief deputy, but a lot can happen over this 10
Right.
months. Steve Burke can also make a decision to actually run for the position, because he's a lot younger than I am. So if that's the case and he's successful, then that may play into it as well.
Okay, and there's no terminal leave or anything that we owe you that you need to consume before
Oh, no,
your
sir.
time is up? Okay. That's a Navy term, I'm sorry.
No,
Accumulated leave.
Yeah.
And-
That's all I got.
Emily, do you have any comment as a county attorney with regard to any issues that you see or possibly have already looked into?
I certainly don't see any issues, but just anecdotally, I've been with the county attorney office, as you all know, for some time now. And the investigative unit under both Major Burke and also acting Sheriff Joe McGivern has really turned around in the last, I don't want to say turned around because it was never poor, but the quality of investigations that we're seeing as the prosecuting agency that's coming from the sheriff's office right now is amazing. And I give Joe and Steve a lot of credit for that, particularly the drug unit, the amount of drugs that we are seizing and cases that we're getting from that, what's called the problem-oriented policing unit, is really quite astounding. And they're doing a really excellent job. Under Major Burke, he's kind of run the investigative unit for a while now, right? And he's does a lot of help with all the local police departments with phone and computer extractions, which I know a lot of the police departments deem to be invaluable. So I can't say enough good things about those two gentlemen, Major Burke, and obviously everything that this acting chief has done. I don't give the former sheriff credit for that. I give our acting sheriff and Major Burke credit for that. So just know that I to the extent that I can endorse somebody, I 100% endorse this candidate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ray,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was a couple minutes late.
no problem. We were just talking about the aspect that's going to occur when the acting sheriff turns 70 on the 24th of October, just shortly before the end of the
I did want to mention that, you know, the sheriff's department plays a key role in our boarding situation at the House of Correction. And I'm sure Joe was hesitant to tell you about the praise that his department's received from the current U.S. Marshal. I met with the current U.S. Marshal and I just about crossed paths when I left Londonderry. He was the chief in Londonderry before he became the marshal. He started shortly after I did, but I did have some communication with him after I left Londonderry and was here. Since then, I've met with him several times, and I'm sure Joe's too kind or doesn't want to brag to tell you that at a recent sheriff's meeting, the U.S. Marshal attended and just praised the heck out of the Stratford County Sheriff's Department for their level of cooperation. As you know, when the Frisbee Hospital and Farmington arrangement for the officer in the schools, when that faded out with Sheriff Brave, Joe was kind enough to move some of those people into transport so we could transport more immigration. Remember now, we only take immigration who are criminals.
Right.
We don't take immigration simply because they lack the appropriate paperwork.
Right.
But their involvement in transporting brings them to the jail. So that's keeping a good level of communication and a good level of transportation and availability has been something that we couldn't get under a previous sheriff. And this, you'll notice in the budget book that there's quite a substantial increase in jail revenue. And one of the primary reasons is transportation, which we get reimbursed for. And you'll also see an increase in reimbursement in this year's proposed budget for those transports, because now they're focused on that as opposed to being focused on the Frisbee Hospital and Farmington detail that, for still reasons that are somewhat unknown to us, collapsed under Sheriff Brave. So, I think he's too humble to say it, but I'm not. He's done a great job.
Thank you.
There is, because of federal rules and regulations, times that we need the sheriff's department at the nursing home. Not that there's anything nefarious, but the CMS requires us to report things to a law enforcement entity. And the promptness of the response and the professional level of working with us on these things has never been that way. And I love Sheriff DuBois. Okay, he's great to work with, but I think Joe's just brought it one step higher in terms of having somebody come over like right away, and which is what we need when we need it. We try not to use it much, but when we do need it, we can't wait. And I think that, and I'm talking about even himself. We had an employee that made an idle threat on his way out the door, and Joe beat me there. In making sure that Riverside was protected till we could determine that the threat was just idle talk. So, and that was also determined by members of his department.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that.
Just thought I'd let you know.
So I think it's fortuitous, given the very unfortunate circumstances of the previous sheriff, that we're able to have somebody step in who has your level of experience. Sometimes experience comes in age can be an asset. And certainly it has been demonstrated in your case, Joe. So, the fact that we're the sole applicant, of course, it makes it an easy decision for us. But if there's no further discussion, we have a quorum. So if someone has a motion with regard to endorsement of Joe McGivern as the nominee recommended from the Policies and Procedures Subcommittee.
So moved.
Okay, so it's moved by Representative Fitzpatrick and seconded by, I think you were first, sorry, Jim. Anyway, so moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Al, you have anything to say?
No, again, I think I said that we're kind of lucky. We're trying to make the best of what was a really bad situation, and I think we're kind of set up, hopefully, to be more successful. So that's great.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So congratulations, Joe. We will be reporting the actions of the subcommittee out to the full delegation, and the full delegation will be meeting. Is it March 4th?
The full delegation is the 20th, the executive committee is the first.
Oh, the executive committee. Okay, well, we'll be reporting the executive committee, so you'll be there that day anyway. And for those of you who are on the executive committee, which would be myself and Representative Fitzpatrick, and we will move forward, and the executive committee, I'm sure, will be delighted in your candidacy and your availability. And we'll take it to the full delegation, which is again on March the 20th itself. Okay, very good. So any other commentary from anyone? Emily, you already spoken. Thank you very much for sharing your information with us, Ray, because things were looking pretty grim there before the commissioners were able to get Mark Rave to go for administrative leave. Because the word I had was the sheriff's department was in dire straits. And you and Steve Burke have pulled it all back together again, and now we're in an excellent situation. So that's, well, there was a phrase for it in the Marine Corps, but I can't put that out. Anyway, so thank you very much. And so the meeting of this Policy and Procedure Subcommittee and open the next session, if you will, because we have, as you know, a requirement under the statute to set the salaries of our and you, Jim, you're sitting in for Representative Harrington, and we appreciate that. He's not able to be with us today. The Policies and Procedures Subcommittee is responsible for recommending the salaries for the next term for our elected officials. So we have a couple of those individuals present, the acting sheriff himself, the county attorney, but also Commissioner McGlaris is one of the elected officials. So I believe you all have a copy of two documents, okay? Both color coded. You want to pull them out so we have them available to confer on? So one of them is the one that shows you all the information on elected officials' salaries in all 10 counties. So that's the one that's somewhat less vividly colored than the first one. So let's just look at that, and if you have any comments or questions, you'll notice that Stratford County down close to the bottom, it's alphabetical. Our salaries are, very much in line with the other county salaries. The four large counties, Hillsborough being the largest, Rockingham is the second largest. Merrimack is the third largest in terms of population, and Stratford is the fourth largest. The other ones are much smaller in population, but let's just look at let's look at the sheriff situation while we have Joe here, and deal with him and not keep him too long. Is there any comment with regard to the sheriff, third sheriff situation in terms of salary? And just before I open the floor, George, as you know, our past procedure has been that we have frequently given salary increases in the commissioner's offices according to what we have given the employees.
In the past.
In the past, we have done it that way as a kind of a guideline.
Was that like percentage you're talking about?
Right, so 2 years ago, we gave roughly a 5% increase to non-union. This year, we gave 3%. So that normally what the delegation has done is taken that past 2 years and adjusted the elected official salaries. It's 2 years in arrears, but they adjust it up for the next election. That's normal what's happened. So in this case, 2 years ago it was 5, last year was, this year is gonna be 3. This wouldn't take effect until next year.
Right,
Okay,
for the next term.
for the next term, whoever's elected.
Right, so the people running for these offices,
Right.
which are all competitive offices
Yeah.
and elective offices.
That was the easy.
That
that
they
was the
know
easiest
what
way.
they're getting.
Yeah, that was the easy, they have to know what they're gonna receive before they file. That's a
Correct.
state statute. In the last 24 or 5 years, that's how we've handled it. Prior to that, it was kind of few dots. Back and forth. And so, I mean, they decided not to do that. They do it based on what everybody else is getting. Because we have full-time employees and we have full-time elected officials and part-time elected officials. But we also have part-time employees too.
Yeah.
Okay, so part-time employees got those raises that I just mentioned to you. 5 and 2 on you. So that's how it's always been handled the last 25 years. It's a lot cleaner and easier. It doesn't get into a lot of heckling one way or another, and it keeps the personality out of it.
Now, that is a somewhat different situation than the full-time elected employees, and that is the county attorneys, the county sheriff, the county register of deeds, and I think that is just those four who are full-time employees, right? But they're also elected officials, so it's there's no guarantee that the people will run again, or there's no guarantee that the citizenry will elect them. But so there, it's a little bit more, what are these offices earning and receiving in the rest of the state, right? Because for years, Leo Lassard was our register of deeds for years before he became commissioner, okay? And he always used to say, I don't want to raise, I don't want to raise, I don't want to raise. And the delegation to some degree was kind of reluctant to force him to take a larger raise. But we said, you're not going to be the register forever. And if we have a situation where the registry official is very lowly compensated, then it's not a competitive office, and we would have to jump it considerably at the time when he decided to retire and runs the commission and so forth. So I think that register may still be relatively lower than some of the same size counties. But that was to some degree because we adjusted it up, and after Leo left, we actually gave him a bigger raise than he wanted the last year as a register, as I recall. So let's look at the county sheriff situation. And Joe, do you have anything to add in this regard?
You know, obviously it won't affect me because it's the next term,
Right.
but you brought up some excellent points because making it attractive for people who will actually be interested in running for these positions.
Right.
So we have to stay competitive to other counties as well and attract the best people for these positions.
It's weird doing this. I'm used to doing union contracts and step up. So there's no way to do experience in here. It doesn't factor in. So I mean, one, making it, whatever, marketable, I guess is the best way to do it. But I think the way you guys have done it, tying essentially the inflation is the best way to do it. I mean, doesn't look to me like we're out of whack. And
No, you know, one other point, if I may, is that Stratford County is somewhat unique because we run a ton of programs. We run more programs than any county in the state, and have gotten accolades as a result of that. So for instance, in the county attorney's office, just one example. We just have a ton of things going. Most sheriff's departments, for instance, they don't transport federal prisoners, they don't transport ICE, they don't do anything. We, which is added responsibility, we get added revenue. Okay,
it's good.
we have a drug court, we have a mental health court. Okay, now up until recently, no other county did that in the state, and that was all under the control of the county attorney in terms of those personnel. So, when you take into consideration the other things that we're doing above and beyond what the job calls for, you know, the basic job. I think that deserves some form of financial recognition. When you're trying to determine, you know, when you're trying to guess at what you think you're gonna do or not do, you know, and I can tell you in most cases, like for instance, just recently, you're gonna see in the budget where we put $39,000 in the budget for additional deputy assistant attorneys, but we can't keep them.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't keep them. And I know, not to bring up any recent problem, but I know that when Brave ran for sheriff, he actually took a cut in that. It was actually a cut in pay for him. But he ran for sheriff. And he was just a lieutenant. When he ran. So, you know, I know it's a crapshoot, and so that's why we tried to take a lot of that out of it by just giving the positions with the employees got prior to that. Now, we've
Right,
made some
that was the
adjustments to
base.
that. We made an adjustment to that years ago with Charlie Crocker when he was county treasurer. And we've made an adjustment with the case of Leo, because Leo went 3 or 4 or 5 years without wanting a raise, but what he did was he was affecting other registrars,
For sure.
getting paid
In a bad way.
in a bad way.
Yeah.
Okay, and so they were complaining because the other delegations would just take like an average, you know? But we've done things like, for instance, in the registry of deeds, and when we've automated the registry of deeds, we've done a lot of things
Yeah.
in these departments, which were way ahead of everybody else. I mean, literally light years ahead of the counties. And I hate to pick on the other counties, but it's just a plain facts. It's not bullshit, it's just facts. So when that occurs, the only other way you can compensate these people for the position, you have to look at what we do in comparison to everybody else. So this comparison, when they do these comparisons here, it's really kind of, it's not.
So I don't know where I am in the discussion, but, I will just know, and 'cause who knows if I'll be in this position, so I'm just talking about it from the position of the office. Stratford County, maybe because of that, is six, there's 5 other counties where the register of deeds are or more, and they're not bringing in the volume that we are.
Yeah.
And taking care of the staff, and deputies actually earning about 5,000 more, not including longevity, than the registrar. So anyone new coming in, that might be an issue in the future, and I just feel an obligation to bring that up. I think if you're running, you know what you're getting, so that's, but it's something to think about, and something I think, it should be known, so. But
I feel funny saying this because it's not, as the city manager, it's not the way I think, but I think we should go to the 8%. I mean, this is extraordinary times. What did we do for the state workers last year? $10,000, was it? Did we bump everybody up?
You went to the state.
Cities are doing it, counties are doing it, state, local governments are doing it. I mean, if we go with the 8% column, we're not out of the norm at all. And it helps make us competitive for the future. So
The CPI for the last 2 years, when you look at the Boston CPI, it was at 9.2%. So,
well, yes, I mean,
so the 8% is not, it's not out of whack, let's just put it.
Can I split the difference? What do you
it's like terrible because I've spent my whole life bargaining against public sector unions.
Yeah.
Keep it under 3,
Yeah.
But I mean, this is, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the other counties of our size and I'm going, I mean, really. And we're gonna try to get a candidate for sheriff. I mean, really, folks?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. So this is our current commitment.
This is what the current numbers are.
And these are the projected increases based on the percentages over that period of time, and it's up to us to decide which one we're gonna take.
You see, with regard to the Stratford County, there are 2 sets of numbers, right? The one is,
Well, yeah, I'm on this one now.
right.
Yeah, the
So,
right-hand
okay.
side is so that bottom on the right-hand side of yellow is the total budgetary impact.
Right, but that is a projection. That's what they're asking for.
Well, it's not what they're at.
And they giving me one.
That's what we're throwing out there.
This is our call.
I
Okay,
mean, I think you could justify 10 if you want to. know the truth.
and this is 3 percentage options. The 4, the 6, and the 8.
We just did that for you to have some reference.
That's right. Right, that's all it's for. It's just to show you what 8% would do in dollars. Okay,
So we did like the last teacher's contract I did was 5 because we were headed into the end. It was COVID, it was inflationary. We had literally no idea how to do a contract, especially a multi-year contract, because there was just so much unknown. And I think now the inflation is down to about 3. I think, so I tend to, I hear exactly what you're saying. It's hard to go forward and ask for a sheriff to come apply, especially with what has happened. We're not in the most ideal situation. I mean, you'll hopefully in the next 10 months, it looks better. But in that respect, given, I think what's important in the conversation is not just the compensation, but the offsetting revenue that's been brought in. And I mean, there's been like, sitting through the revenue side, there's like this really great obsession to maximize your revenue. So I think that plays into the compensation part. It's like, providing a little more compensation up front that we're gonna gain back in revenue is great.
It is a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
And it's not like these people, even the full-time, are working just 40 hours a week. I mean, that's just not the case. None of them are. Really, you're right, that, they don't get overtime or anything like that. And so, there's. You gotta look at that. So,
I mean, these are very modest salaries.
Totally.
Sorry,
I mean, I understand, I'm just thinking, going back to the delegate, I mean, I would tend to push towards the split the middle and go 6%. I think that's pretty generous. I think, it's justifiable with the revenue coming in, but it doesn't seem like we're excessive. I mean, again, I think it's incumbent upon us going forward to really ensure that we have continuity of service, and so I really want to keep our employees. So I think, I don't quite know what the inflation number is gonna look like in the future. It seems to be trending in the right direction. But I think, given that we're only talking a difference of, what is that, like less than like $6,000 total, it's completely reasonable, in my opinion, to take the 6 and justify it, but
I'm not gonna argue with you.
yeah,
We'll do what we can do.
yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I like the 8%.
You're like, hey.
I do, I think things are gonna get worse before they get better, and there's gonna be a long recovery time depending on who does what. And we have a really outstanding group of individuals here doing a hell of a job.
Yeah,
I have no problem with 8%.
Okay,
all right, I'm not gonna argue against it.
okay, so while we're in this thing, we should factor in the next situation we're gonna deal with, so that we can let Emily get back to her office. But the reality is that with the county attorney, now we're in a very competitive situation. And Tom Velarde always used to say, that he was happy with the salary he had, but one of the problems was that, that keeping all of his deputies was a real problem. And Emily, I'm sure you have been dealing with it, because you're not brand new with the department, even if you're new as the county attorney. But the bottom line is, keeping attorneys is, very difficult, has been very difficult, and I don't speak to that issue. Why here?
Sure, I mean, yes, it's a very competitive labor market for attorneys. I think I had written in my budget proposal, one of the issues is we have fewer graduates going through law, so fewer people going to law school these days, fewer graduates, more competitive job market. I know the county attorney left for a much larger increase in salary just to go to the attorney general's office. So take that for whatever it's worth. But I can tell you, my plan is to run. I don't know if there'd be anybody to run against me, regardless of what the salary is. So I appreciate any increase, whether or not it becomes my increase or not. I don't know. We can't predict the future. But the only other thing I would add to the conversation is looking at the salary lines per county. I think it's important to keep in mind that we have probably one of the higher housing costs in Stratford County. It's more expensive to live here than it is in most of these counties, other than Rockingham, which is obviously one of the higher paying ones for their elected officials. So just something to consider too, if you're going to try to attract applicants that have to live in the county, it's expensive to live in the county.
Okay, so do we have a proposal that somebody wants to move? And we don't have to make the full-time employee, full-time elected office, we don't have to make the thing across the board, because the county attorney situation really is highly qualified and highly competitive. So I think we have to factor in what the market is with regard to the county attorney's office and the county attorney, in a way that perhaps is not quite the same case for the register of deeds and for the county sheriff. But anyway, so just let's get some numbers out there.
Well, you want me to move the 8% for all these positions?
So are you comfortable with?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we're gonna do 8% for for which office now? We're gonna do it for here,
I
for
say across the
everybody?
board.
Across the board.
Across the
Across the
board.
board?
Yeah.
Okay, we wanna have something we can put before the executive committee and the delegation as a harmonious proposal of this subcommittee. So 8% across the board. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Well, I think we probably should have a roll call. Go ahead.
No, I was just,
Oh, you're
I'm in favor.
in favor.
Yeah, I don't think I.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I know.
So is that, you got that? Yeah, okay. So 8% across the board, and looking at those numbers here. Okay. So it's not a substantial difference between 8, 6 and even 4% in terms of actual dollars in any of these offices.
No.
No,
So-
and I mean, I'd be open again, we've got to make these jobs competitive. But one of the things I did in Rochester, I started the whole in-house city attorney thing. I hired Terrence, you know,
Mhm.
and please.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I like Terrence, so.
I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. But, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and there's less, kids going to law school.
Yeah, we have way fewer graduates than we ever did. Right now, the graduating class for May, everybody that's into criminal law has pretty much got a job secured for when they graduate.
Really?
Which when I graduated, over 10 years ago, you were fighting people to get a job, so it's just a tough labor market. It's tough to hire.
Is it out of our realm again? I am new to this, being a legislator, to ask that maybe they have the county, administrator do a salary study about for statewide county attorney, a little more in-depth.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I would love that.
Because if we're gonna do something extraordinary, we probably might wanna have
An idea.
something to hang our hat on, you know, is that how you for
No,
me to ask for something like that?
If it sounds outrageous to me.
it sounds really
Well,
reasonable.
we could do that. We've always tried to at least have the prosecuting attorneys get paid at the level of the public defenders. Because they're actually working against each other in the system. And now the public defenders just got a huge raise by the state. I think it was like 16%. It was a good healthy
Well,
rate.
again, we gave 10,000, but we did do $10,000 across the board for all state employees last year, didn't we?
10%.
10%?
Yes, sir.
Across the board? for
Yes, I
state-
verified that.
For all state employees.
I verified that.
That came right out of, that
I don't
came
mind-
right out of the governor's office.
Yeah, and I don't mind telling you, it's caused me more than a little bit of anxiety in our union negotiations.
I bet.
I mean, we've settled with all our 4 unions, but I don't mind telling you how many times that got thrown in our face.
Yeah, of course.
They're going, well, why is the state employee any better than the county employee? And, and we're giving raises between 2 and 5% is what our settlements were. But it's a hard thing to swallow when, fortunately, we were able to negotiate a very favorable health insurance,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
change,
that's right.
and that really helped us, but,
Well, for one thing, the county employees are paid on the basis of largely a property tax funded system, right?
well, not exactly,
State employees are in a different category.
Yeah.
That's not property tax funded.
try and explain that.
Right,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. I mean, you have to appreciate that unions thrive. Something I can tell, you'll know immediately. Unions thrive on creating some discontent. Okay, that's how they get their membership. Let's just be honest about it. One of the easy ways to show discontent is to show that somebody got a bigger raise than you did.
Yeah.
And they breed this concept, okay, of, well, they don't think you're worth it, you need us as a union to represent you, And that's just the way it is. Fortunately, we settled with all the unions. It's all funded in the budget that you're reviewing. But a lot of that funding was offset by revenue.
Mhm.
You know, the nursing home alone generated, we're proposing a $5 million revenue increase in the nursing home. You know, as an example, which was some of the increases that we were talking about. It's not all of it, but it's the pieces of the increase that we were talking about having the potential to do in the new nursing home. We're not ignoring it. We're, starting to get those increases.
I mean, but that's to his point. What we don't want to do is put ourselves in a position, because again, I've been on a union, I've negotiated against unions, I guess, but
I've done it both ways.
both ways I've done.
I've done it both ways.
So, but the thing is, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're in a conflict with what our union bargaining units are and what our elected bargaining units, whatever that may be. And so to Dan's point, if we do have I think we need more to hang our hat on down the future than what we had. Just where are we? What do we have to make up? What's our strategy? We've had that. I had it with, assistant superintendents and stuff where they're really out of market value, but I'm still trying to meet the budget, still not trying to upset our negotiations with our bargaining units. So I think that's a good idea looking forward, if we are really behind on people, what's a strategic way to bring it up?
But we've always, when we've experienced, let's face it, the county attorney's office was always a training ground. It's been that way forever. As long as I've been here, it's been a training ground. But we also recognize that having experienced prosecutors make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, makes a difference. You gotta try to hang on to them. So I think we've made, we got $39,000 in the budget this year. We put in for adjustments to
Right.
assistant attorneys. We've already made it full, so we made it up we came in with some adjustments to our revenue figures, so it doesn't affect the budget.
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess the point is that we've always, in terms of just the elected officials, we've always been running a couple of years behind.
Yeah.
Okay, we've always run a couple of years behind because we couldn't. I get you all this information, at the end, what's gonna happen is it's just gonna be you throwing the dart against the wall. And as it relates to the elected officials, now with the staffing folks, that's a little different thing. I mean, we can do an analysis on that, but again, we do things in those courts that most other people don't do. So that's to play into that.
Yeah, I mean, the ones I see that run into it is Register of Deed, County Attorney, and Sheriff. Those three kind of separate themselves out from the other. The other are pretty small money, and there's really, I'm not gonna quibble over $9,000. But it's like, I think, longer, and it's really hard because you're in this election cycle, which adds like this weird uncertainty to it. But again, still, I think a strategy we were kind of thinking how strategically to link up our union bargaining units with our elected units.
Right.
Those three positions particularly.
It's always bothered me that we had staff in those, in departments that were actually making more than the elected official that they.
Yeah, that's not good.
At the state level.
And that always rubbed me the wrong way. We've always tried to create that balance. a little bit, and I hate to say it, but we were screwed up. Like, I mean, that's it.
Don't give me the.
Don't give me.
I don't remember hearing him say it.
And there was a bunch of times when the county, all the elected officials got no raise, a bunch of them, and it created that compression in those days, especially.
Well, I'm on the Joint Committee on Employee Classifications, and I can tell you it's an acknowledged fact that a lot of the commissioners and so forth, right, they all have the salary, but the people below them are moving up
Right.
because they're in a competitive market, right? Then you would get what's called a compression, because you got the surge from the staff members in many cases who are in very competitive professions, and you ain't gonna get them.
No.
We had a situation, I think, with the coroner's office, where we couldn't get anybody. We had to give an extraordinary increase in salary to get anybody to run for that office, medical examiner's office, as I recall. For a while, we didn't have any, but nobody responded. to the salary we were offering. And the attorney situation is also very comparable. You're talking about highly competitive and well remunerated. And so anyway, Jim, I think you had it.
Well, if, it's been requested that Mr. Bauer do a deep dive on the county attorneys,
Right,
can we include the office staff there too? What do you know, prosecutors, defenders,
Yeah.
the people that we have, I realize it's a trading ground, a lot of places are like that, but I've heard this complaint repeatedly, and we might as well include that in his research.
Yeah.
So that at the next opportunity, we got that to look at.
It won't take us long. We can get that done.
good.
Well, I just,
We
you got an executive committee coming up and then,
The Criminal Justice Committee did throw another, what, $40,000, I think, something like that roughly into the pot. Especially for raises for.
right, but nobody's had a real hot
for
look at it.
Emily's
And
office.
I think that needs to be shared with the delegation, so we can all.
No,
get on the
no,
same page.
I take your point on that, I agree with that.
Right, we haven't got there yet, but we'll get on it. We'll get on it right away.
If you're gonna do it, might as well take the whole office and
Yeah.
put it all together.
So Kathy, you haven't weighed in on anything yet?
No, I think I did. I
Yeah, we
I
can look at that.
indicated, that.
Yeah.
I think I did. I can repeat it if you'd like, but I think that, as far as Stratford County, and again, this is a little awkward because, I may not be in this position, next term, but I would just point out that I think that we're probably sixth compared to the other counties that, considering the volume, there's several that are, earning a lot more, that, the deputy is earning more than the register here, and that doesn't include longevity, which is totally separate, I understand that. And that it's just good to know that, I think, going into it, if you're gonna attract someone who wants to take on the position, so that's all. No, it has, it's, if you know that Carol and Belknap and they're all earning significantly more, so.
We probably will do, what we should do is look at all three of those for full time.
For sure.
Yes.
Look at all three and then give you guys a
Full-time
and try to
employee.
get it to you, right, try to get it to you before the executive committee.
All
So
right.
that you guys can have another meeting prior to the executive. Before you make a recommendation for that. Would that be acceptable for you?
Sure.
If you come up with something that deserves another meeting, you can
Absolutely.
do that.
All right.
I think it would really help us when we go to the full
Everybody
delegation.
okay with that?
Yeah.
Meeting again. I don't know where Representative Petrie is today, ordinarily he's on the subcommittee, and ordinarily he's always here, so I hope he's not under the weather or something like that.
Well, at least you'll know.
Right.
You'll make a decision, whatever the decision is based on what it is.
Right,
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Well, up, down, right, left, whatever you decide to do, at least it's based on, it has a
so get us those
foundation.
numbers.
Yeah.
There's a foundation to it, whatever the decision is.
Right, get us those additional numbers, if it
Right.
requires us to meet again, so be it.
Yeah, okay, I'll get away from there.
Well, thank you all for being here, and congratulations, Joe will be moving your nomination, in the executive committee on, 4th of March.
First,
What?
March 1st.
Friday the
First?
Friday the
Okay,
first.
well, I'll be here. Whichever-
Next Friday.
Just make sure somebody call me and wake me up. What can I tell you? Okay, anyway. so
Thank you very much.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Are we done?
Thank you very much.
We're done.
Right.
Thank you. Well, we're done for today.
that was pretty easy.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
It's
How are
really
you
weird.
feeling, Emily?
Uh,
Has the board of employers-
Why aren't those just like regular?
How's